Hello, everyone, and welcome back.
That was too American.
Well, because I'm trying to be American. I'm not trying to be, leprechaunish. Leprechaunian. I don't know.
Leprechaunsky.
Leprechaunsky.
Leprosy?
Leprosy, what? Welcome back. We are here with Grant, Daryl, and Cynthia, and we think it is important. This every now and then we do a public service announcement, and this is one of them. And this public service announcement is about why is it important that you have a technical co-founder. We increasingly are running into more and more people who don't have a technology background. Maybe they've been working on their company for a while, and they think they understand the technology well enough to be able to say how long something's going to take to do or how complicated something is. And while we recognize that you may understand a lot about your technology or your company or what you're doing, there actually is value in having a technical co-founder or someone technical on your team who can give you sort of that reality check view of what's really happening under the covers. So we want to talk about that a little bit today and try and see if we can convince some of you why this is important and why you need to have it, regardless of how you bring that person onto your team. If you're building something that has any kind of a technology component, whether it's hardware, software, an app, a website, you need this. So, Daryl, this was actually one that you brought up a few weeks ago, and I'm curious why.
Well, I think what I mentioned to you was whenever I've worked for a company or on a project that had leadership that wasn't technical, it never worked out. It always caused a problem because, it's the classic, couldn't you just, right?
Right.
That phrase got emitted more by those leaders. And I don't want to speak ill against these people because they're not bad.
Yeah. Let's just set like the landscape here. We are not saying that you're bad, wrong, stupid, any of that if you have fallen into this trap. We're just trying to help illuminate why the trap looks like it does, because this is one of those things that kind of is a little bit hidden under the surface if you're not really clear about it. And it could be the source of a lot of money wasted, time spent on things that you can't understand what's happening. And it's just because you don't have this level of understanding, and that's okay, right?
That is okay. And I think that speaks to also, it's not just that you need a technical co-founder or whatever. You need a technical co-founder who is good at translating this nerd speak, who can explain things to you in a way that you're going to understand, that's going to make sense.
Yes.
So that when you look at the AWS invoice and it just went up by 80%, they
and
can
you're
explain
like,
to
what
you.
happened?
Yeah.
Somebody can sit down with you and say, okay, here's what happened to our volume. Here's how we had to scale in order because we picked up a new geographic region or something, So it's an interesting point you make. There is a distinction here in technical co-founder. It's not just a coder. You can't just, I mean, any coder on the planet who understands technology and writes code is not necessarily a good technical co-founder.
Right. And there's sort of a converse
of
that.
Probably the opposite is mostly true.
Yes. Because
a lot of technical people have gone on their own or partnered up with somebody to do something, and it turned into, pardon my French, but shit show.
Yeah.
After a year and a half or 2 years of effort.
Yeah.
We've seen that over and over again. And we've all participated in it.
Yep. And it's no different than saying anybody can be an entrepreneur, right? We feel like there are a lot of people out there who have the ability to be an entrepreneur, and that may not be that may be untapped.
Anyone can cook.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean anyone can cook. It means from anywhere could come, and from anyone could come that thing that makes an amazing entrepreneur, but it's not everyone.
Right.
Same with a technical co-founder. It takes that same desire and spark and ability to speak to other people who are not technical people about technical things in a way that they all get it. but you also have to understand the technology. So to Grant's point, it's a smaller subset.
Yes.
Just like
what
with
Daryl
entrepreneurs.
said just is making me grin because it made me think everybody can cook, and there's Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah.
You look what, not only can he cook, but look at the entrepreneurial.
Yes.
And I mean, he writes a book every year, opens
Yep.
another hotel or restaurant every year.
Yep.
He has, 3 shows going at any given time.
Yeah.
And he's inspirational,
Yes.
so that
Yes.
there's the technical person to aspire to be.
Yes.
Or, hopefully to find.
Yes.
Isn't he the one that curses at the...
At times, yeah.
Okay.
And not.
I just want to make sure I'm on the right page here.
That's for TV too, really,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, because he's been written up as being very philanthropic, and his brother died tragically of addiction and tore their family,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
I'm not
he's
knocking
done
him. I
a
just
lot.
wanted to make sure I had the right mental picture here.
I saw a meme the other day that said, "Imagine Gordon Ramsay as the voice of your map." You missed the bloody exit because you're.
You need to see the new Vacation movie. There's a scene in it that you reminded me of. We watched it again the other night.
That totally. I was watching an episode of the Great British Baking Show.
Yeah.
The Great British Baking Show yesterday, and one of the girls got Baker of the Week like 3 weeks in a row, and every week she was calling her mom and saying, "I got Baker of the Week," or whatever they call it.
Star
and her
Baker.
mom was like, "Bloody hell, that's amazing!" And she was like, "Mom, we're on TV," and she's like, "I know they'll cut it out, it's fine." And they're like, "Totally." It's so funny. And she did it every week.
So bloody hell is a bad thing to say.
Apparently it's,
it is.
like, I mean, it's British television,
Yeah.
the Queen, and they have
Right.
to wear nylons and whatever over there,
Yeah.
I saw somebody write "chuff" the other day.
Chuff. Yeah, I
was
got
so
chuffed.
chuffed about this. That's a real good thing.
Yep.
Like, I'm excited. And then I saw a little video clip, somebody being interviewed, and an expression of surprise was "shut the fridge." And I thought that was hilarious.
My favorite is taking the piss out of someone. I don't want to do that. I don't want to take piss out of anything, really.
Or whatever.
All right,
But
so
anyway,
veering back
back.
around why you need a technical co-founder. They could be British, you don't know.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
We're not nationalists here. And the flip side of that, though,
Yeah.
is you want someone who can translate what you're saying into tech speak to the people, your contractors, your employees, all of those people, right?
Yes.
Take the specifications.
You need someone who can take the specifications from the customer.
people person.
You need a people person.
Yeah, but
That's true. You need a translator who works in both
both
directions.
ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which already
Flavor
again
both
sort
teams.
of limits. It again limits.
Yes.
You can't just go out and find any tech
Right.
guy or gal and say you're my technical co-founder because you
Right.
can write code. Well, that might be good when it's just you two, but
Right.
what are you going to do when you have a
When you
successful
have-
company
yeah,
and you
when
have
you have to have
team
a
of
couple of
employees?
other people, and now you have to have somebody who can ask. So in a session with other people, I mean, we're almost saying that this person, in addition to having technical skills, possibly some coding skills if that's what you need, or hardware skills, whatever that is, they also need to sort of act like a project manager, and that they need to be able to ask the right kinds of questions to suss out all the details and all the nitty-gritty before putting that into requirements and taking it back to a development team.
You
Because
want to be a master of logistics
yeah,
and what order things have to happen and what requires other things to be done. Because if you can feel your way through that in technical projects, there's just huge amounts of time you can save where things normally can sometimes get stuck.
yes,
Because one party's focusing on one thing that is dependent on something that's not done, and not seeing the forest for the trees where, oh, wait a minute, I could be working on this whole authentication branch.
yep, yep,
It's not always like that, but just knowing what
pieces
was
are
going to
where.
cause a time lag.
yeah,
It's like logistical planning. I
Yeah.
did this thing where, like, if they knew it was going to take 14 days to get a permit for this construction, that had to be built in. It's like, well, that's 14 days that we can be working down a whole bunch of other paths
Yep.
that we can
Concurrent
still
work.
proceed on
Yes.
without that permit. And as
Yes.
soon as it's done, we can
Yes.
pull this, so.
yeah. And I think there's this misconception. Oftentimes, a technical co-founder, especially in very early stages, will end up being a CTO or something, some kind of technology officer in a C-suite. I think there's a misconception that guy is the geekiest guy in the company.
Yeah.
That's really not the best. I mean, we've seen this a lot where we're at companies where the guy who gets promoted up the chain is just the dude who's been there the longest and understands the technical debt best.
And bumping him up into a management position is often a terrible idea.
A horrible idea. That guy's not a people person.
Yes.
Well, this is making me think, though, of a lot of companies, maybe not a lot, that's probably, I shouldn't throw those qualifiers, of companies that, famously started out as a dreamer and a coder. They both could, the dreamer could do some coding, but, I'm looking at Apple, I'm looking at Bill Gates and Paul Allen, and that was it in the beginning. And they were successful to a point, but of course, obviously they recognized that he wants to stay he's an engineering guy.
Yeah.
So let's let him lead some certain parts of certain projects that are visionary and he wants to do, but we need to bring in somebody else too.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good question to ask when you're looking for a technical co-founder.
Successful.
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm saying.
It has been successful, but when you're looking for a technical co-founder, it's probably worthy to ask them, hey, is this, do you want to be a CTO? Do you want to be managing people, or do you just want to help me get this off the ground?
Let's actually, this is pointing to a distinction we could make between having an equity partner who's a really good technologist, who writes really great code, who has, who is in the weeds, who is a really great engineer or architect, versus what we're calling a technical co-founder, which involves this management, this people. Sometimes a tech co-founder needs to go pitch with you.
Yes.
I think that it's almost, I feel like it almost naturally happens the way it should happen with people like a Gates or a Woz, who are probably making some high-level calls in the beginning because things are small.
Yeah.
Yes. Handle on this.
Yep.
We've got 1 or 2 products right now.
Yep.
And as soon as it starts, it's the growth that happens after that where somebody like that, because I feel like I'm speaking from personal experience, looks at it and says, whoa,
I don't know how to do
what's
this.
going on. I still kind of want to stay on this.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And
Yeah.
that's when you
Sure.
say, okay, the natural growth of the company requires
That now we need to hire for this kind of thing or whatever. Yeah, totally. And that's the other misconception is I think a lot of people, 2 people or 3 people get together and they start a company. And then as things progress, whether it's ego or whether it's expectation, people's feelings and thoughts about things get in the way. So when it's obvious that, hey, what we actually need is to hire a CTO, whoever's been that technology dude from the beginning gets butthurt, for lack of a better term,
Oh, you guys are getting me ready for something.
No.
No, but that's, I've thought of that. We should all be thinking of stuff like that at different times of, who's the team? What's the team? What did people on the team do? And is it getting to be where that position is getting too hard right now? The field's gotten bigger and we need to bring other people in to help with that.
Yep. And that's the thing that this is. So a lot of what I talk about in the Startup Therapy Couch, a lot of what we talked about in our podcasts and our videos, we talk a lot about how important, how crucial the team is to the success of a startup. That doesn't mean you have all the smartest people doing all the jobs all the time. It means that your team has the interest of your startup at heart every second of every day, all along the way. And that means that if you have been doing the thing and all of a sudden you're not the guy qualified to do the thing, you're like, okay, we got to get on board with finding somebody who's qualified to do this and let me do the thing that I'm really good at, because that's all in service of having the company be successful. So everything else is just ego getting in the way of needing a title or needing recognition or needing something. And why did you get into this? If you got into this to be on the speaking circuit, there are way better ways to do that. If you got into this to be like a god of something in technology, there are way better ways to do that. If you got into this to have a successful startup, you do what you're good at and you be willing to say what you're not good at.
Yeah. What it sounds like you're saying is you need to put up a big sign that says, is this good for the company?
I think you just got to remember, I want to be good at cashing checks.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be real good at that.
So-
But if you can set your ego aside, and everybody needs to, and it's hard for everybody on this
hard.
planet. But if you can do that and
You looked
really
right at
think,
me when
is
you
this
said
good
that.
for the company?
Yeah.
Then, there is a payoff in the end. And do you really want to be doing something that you're not good at? Are you going to be happy doing something you're not good at?
Are you going to be willing to get up and do it as many days for as many years and as many hours a day as it's going to take to be successful?
Right. Or would you rather have someone else come in that can take care of this? Now, this kind of touches on, there's another avenue that you can take with this, and we've seen William do this with PubTech, which is go learn how to be a coder. Go learn the technical stuff.
Right.
99% of the entrepreneurs out there are not going to want to do that, and I don't blame them, because how do you start and run a company and learn this stuff at a low level like he did?
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, definitely to his credit, he's learned and done a lot more than I've ever seen somebody like that move and do. He is still totally reliant on, especially your, guidance in terms of setting things up in the world and actually making them, a real.
Yeah.
I mean, he could run this on his home computer all he wants, but he needs that kind of expertise, and that's what we're talking
And
about.
he recognizes that,
knowing, the cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah, so inevitably he's going to have to find some technical leadership to bring on. He's not going to be able to be CEO and CTO at the same time, but him doing what he did,
It's gotten him over a lot of humps.
It's gotten him and it's also going to help him in his conversations with his future CTO.
Yes, because he understands enough
Right.
to get that person onboarded into the process to be able to say, here's what our technical debt is. Here's the places where we know we're going to have to make changes later. Here's the things we sort of shoehorned.
Right.
He knows a lot about it, a lot of areas. For the record, he's in a warehouse right now, loading up the
Soldering boards and
literally
testing them.
firmware and getting them ready for shipping.
Yep.
So he kind of knows he's one of those founders who's going to be able to say, I've done every job in this company.
Yeah.
And to be fair, not like you said, Daryl, not everybody needs to or wants to or has the capability or the desire to learn every job in their company. But you better know a lot about it. And in order,
pick up a dummies book at least.
Yeah. In order to know as much as you can, if you don't want to be in the weeds with it, you have to have somebody good who you trust them.
Yep.
You believe what they're saying, and what they say to you makes sense. And it makes sense to everybody else that they're talking to. Because like we said, this person they're a co-founder. They need to be able to act as if they are just as much invested and just as much, the face of your company as you are.
Right.
So I think the thing that prompted this is we have a client. She's a wonderful woman. She's working really, really hard. She's had a couple technical co-founders kind of come and go over the last few years for various reasons, nothing to do with her. And she came to us and asked for some sort of emergency level help. She had some stuff that was happening with some of the modules in one of her apps on the iOS side. And she was like, oh my gosh, can you help me? And so we kind of dug in and sort of tried to touch as little as possible and go in and like pick apart this one piece that needed to be fixed, and then, crossed our fingers and shoved it out there and said, okay, make sure that works like you're hoping. And she was like, yay, it works. It's great. The problem is because she doesn't understand as deeply as a tech co-founder would, the technical debt, the issues, the pieces that have gone into play over the years of the app and the website and everything, she doesn't really know what it takes to do a lot of the things that she needs done. So one of the things was it should be simple enough. It's a text update to a terms and conditions or a wait time for something or whatever, right? So, of course, we started digging into the app looking for where is this, except that that's not actually in the app anywhere. No. It's actually hosted on a website somewhere, and you have to have access to all the website code, which is in different branches and all that. And she knew enough to be able to find the branches once we directed her to what we needed, but that actually didn't solve her problem because she needed a change in the app for something else she was doing so we could push out a new version.
Right.
And so we probably spent extra time going through that exercise to figure all that out that she wouldn't have had to spend if she had a technical co-founder who understood the structure of everything.
Exactly.
So in that way, it is going to cost her more money over time. You know, the more that we get familiar, the more that we'll be able to say that kind of stuff. But if she stops using us and finds a different developer or whatever later, she's going to go through that whole thing again, potentially. So think of your tech co-founder as someone who has institutional knowledge about your company, your technology, what you're doing, and is almost like a backup to you. You know, all that stuff about the business side and about the industry specific, domain specific stuff, the market that you know, they know just the same amount of stuff on the technology side. And wherever you overlap, that's where your partnership lives.
So that's probably one of the criteria you should look for in a technical co-founder, right? You need to find one that probably has a little bit of business background, that understands the business side of it.
Either they need to have a business background or they need to understand the industry they're working in really well.
Yeah.
Which can kind of be called the same thing. You know, I have an innate knowledge and a historical buildup of knowledge from all of the businesses that I've built in all different industries over 20 some odd years. For me, getting involved in a new industry is not that big of a deal because I know all the things that translate no matter what the industry is, and I know how to ask the right questions to figure out what's new. That's the kind of thing that you need in a technical co-founder, is either they've worked in that industry so they understand all the terminology and all the distinctions and all the pieces of what they're doing, or they have a business background. Now, does that mean you need to find a technical co-founder who's a programmer who has an MBA? No. I've railed against the MBA system for so long. I'll do it again. I know it's annoying to a lot of people who know me, but I have seen very, very good people completely ruined by MBA programs. You don't need to look for that, okay? You heard it here. You just need to find somebody who's got some damn common sense.
The MBA is Master of Business Administration, and you have a startup. They're not administering an existing business. They're helping you start a brand new one, which is a different set of skills. Yes.
You need somebody. You know, one of the biggest things we had a friend years and years ago. He was very successful in a consulting company. He ended up selling his company to Microsoft. He was very, very successful. And then he went and got his MBA. And he became this person who thought he knew everything and thought he was the most valuable person in the room, even though he had no domain experience or knowledge in the industry that he was working with us on building a company. And it changed him in a way that was really disappointing. You know, it was, and I've seen that multiple times, not necessarily on that scale, but where all of a sudden, I have an MBA, now I know everything. And it's like every company is a little different and it's going to face a little bit different challenges. And you have to be able to think on your feet and outside of the box.
In my experience, the two MBAs that I can think of that I know is the opposite, but also they're both very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And you know one of them.
Yeah.
So that maybe that's the differentiator.
Yeah.
Is they have an MBA and, you know, I'm sure they employ that background, but they want to start companies.
Yeah. And in order to build a successful startup, you have to be able to think differently.
Yeah.
This isn't show up 9 to 5 and do a thing. I mean, we have a couple of projects that we did early on in our incubator that have not had nearly the success that we've had with clients since we developed our process and developed our startup program and sort of learned how to distinguish, you know, not just good ideas from or viable ideas from not, but also X factor entrepreneurs from not. And the biggest distinction between the successful ones and the not successful ones is how they come at every problem in front of them. You know, you could look at problems and say, oh, I just have to throw more money at that to make it work. Or you could look at a problem and go, okay, how do I get creative and solve this problem in a way that actually elevates my brand or elevates, my customer experience? And William has been doing this for 5 years, and I can promise you he's not throwing money at problems. He never does. He's always like getting in the weeds and figuring it out and thinking of new stuff. And he'll call me and say, what do you think of this? And I'm like, that's brilliant. I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
I'm going to recommend that to like 3 other people I know are having this problem right now. So how creative are you? And going back to your technical co-founder, that person needs to be a creative thinker too. I mean, it's one thing, this is why Grant is a fantastic, we're all kind of technical co-founders and whatever. Grant's ability to take a step back and figure out a whole different way of doing something, going completely outside the box, is phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. It is phenomenal because I don't know about you, but me, I'm like, square peg. I know that PHP fits that square peg. I'm going for it. I'm like, let's just get the problem solved. And Grant's like, whoa.
Well,
maybe there's a faster.
I was thinking the other day, there's things that I'll spend a week on that you'll sit down and get working by the end of the day. And it may not be the prettiest,
better.
and it may have some hard coded stuff, and it may need some. But I admire that because if I'm on my own, there's times that I'll spend a week on stuff because I'm trying to figure out the best way, or how this will fit with that, and will this fit with that, and I like. This works. I got this to work.
You make it better.
Now make it fit in with everything.
Yeah.
And make it so we can start doing this with other things.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is creativity does matter. And it's easy to think that, technology, that's very, very cerebral and very, engineering, and there's one way to do things right. And that's not true at all.
No, not at all.
I mean, we have found really creative. We've got a couple of proposals out right now for projects that we're really excited about. And we have gotten super creative with how to bring the costs down to make it viable for some of these companies to get off the ground and still make the money that we need to and meet our costs and all of that kind of stuff. And it just takes getting creative. So what's the advice to people? How do you find one of these? I mean, how do you find somebody?
Craigslist.
Plus you can sell that old couch.
You laugh about that, but I was listening to a podcast. I can't think of how I built that.
NPR. Right?
I think it is an NPR. I'm not sure. And he was interviewing, I can't remember the name of the company, but it's something like lobster rolls. That's how the founder found his co-founder. Was
really?
Through Craigslist.
Really?
There's stories of those people in different big cities with cardboard signs, MBA will work for, more creative. That's the thing, is they're always creative enough to catch attention, and they go viral, and suddenly they get all these job offers.
Yeah.
And that's always kind of funny to watch. And you got to think that's part of why, it's creativity and it's chutzpah.
You're right.
Chutzpah.
You got moxie, kid.
You got to spit from the back of your tongue to say chutzpah.
Chutzpah. So is this the kind of thing where let's just pretend for a second I'm an entrepreneur, I have an idea, or maybe even I have a product like our client, and I'm searching for a technical co-founder. Where do I go? Do I go to meetups that are all like coders? Do I go, go
to meetups, ask through your network, I think.
LinkedIn might be a really great resource for that.
Yep.
Look for people who have programming background or some kind of experience in the industry that you're in, maybe.
Yep.
And just reach out to them and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm looking for a tech co-founder. Would you be interested, or do you know anybody who might be?
Well, if you're looking for a tech co-founder, you said trust was a big thing.
Yeah.
Then you go to the people that you do trust now.
Yeah.
And you ask them.
Yeah.
Right.
Who do they know? Who do they trust?
And talk to these people. And
it's like getting a mechanic.
I think a lot of it too is gut feel. Find someone you have a connection with.
Yeah.
Because that might go farther than anything.
Right.
You have a connection with them. You have a rapport. So that to me, that often covers that overcomes any other objections that you might otherwise have. Well, they're not that. They don't seem like the they don't have the most background in C++, so I don't know if I want them, but who cares, right?
Yeah. Sort of like, I don't have a huge background in building a successful one of these. So let's go link arms and do it together because we get along and we see eye to eye on how this should go.
There used to be this concept they called founder dating, which was kind of like a meetup, but for the purpose, it was like what it said, founder dating, right? I mean,
Theranos.
I don't know if they still, if anybody still does that, but you could go to those kind of things and you basically say, I'm a whatever, and I'm looking for a technical co-founder.
Yeah. Sort of reminds me of like 10-10-10.
Yeah.
Which is that model where, people have ideas, can pitch their ideas, and then people who want to be like either co-founders with that person or they're an entrepreneur looking for an idea.
Makes me think of phone numbers on the bathroom wall. If you got a great startup idea, call.
Another one, I don't know if they still do this. It was all the rage about 10 years ago. Startup weekends. And the idea behind Startup Weekend is you go and on Friday night, you have an idea and you pitch it to the room. And then you basically, in doing so, you try to get as many people. And so, you might have 50 ideas, but only 4 of them can be built. So you try to gather enough people to your team to build this. And obviously, several of those people are going to be coders. And then you spend that night, Saturday night, Sunday morning, building something. Building the thing, a prototype. And then you all pitch it on Sunday afternoon.
Got it.
And I did this with a previous startup that I had with my co-founder in Vegas, and we actually had Kevin Rose as one of the judges. Tom, your friend Tom from MySpace. Is it MySpace?
MySpace, yeah.
As one of the judges, and I don't remember who the third one was. But that was a really neat experience. It was a really interesting experience because there were some great ideas that came out of that.
Yeah.
So that's another avenue you could pursue if anybody is still doing that.
Yeah. Interesting.
And you get a prototype at the end of it, right? I mean, you have something to show off at the end of it, which is huge.
Yeah.
Because you also have, there were probably 50 to 100 people in the room at any given moment, especially during the pitch. So you have 50 to 100 people in addition to those judges telling you whether this is a marketable idea or not.
Right. And like we talked about last week, or, the last podcast we put out, 42% of companies fail because there's no market need.
Right.
Right. So in order to test all that, you need a prototype and you need to have other people listening and validating what you're saying and what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. Right. You need somebody to play devil's advocate. And a lot of times a co-founder with you will be that person. It's sort of like if you both have the same goal and the same vision, but you can ask hard questions of each other, I think that's really important.
Yes.
Being able to say, I know we've been talking about, we just went through this like a month ago where we finally came to the realization, or I did, I guess, that basing our entire short-term cash flow business model on the startup program doesn't work because we can't staff it enough to be able to bring in enough business at the price point where we don't have to add more people every time we bring on. It's like incrementally more work all the time. And so it just never works.
It's like Uber.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're subsidizing a portion of everyone's startup program.
As our old friend who will go unnamed.
Yes.
It did not scale.
That's right.
When he would ask, does it scale? No, it didn't scale.
Doesn't scale. But we have people in our circle in addition to each other. Oftentimes we're asking hard questions of each other, but we also have other people in our circle who, my friend I was telling you about, who I get on the phone with whenever I have a new idea. Sometimes it sounds mean the way that he's pushing and poking and prodding and
but that's what
whatever.
You want.
But it's exactly what I want because I know when there's no more holes for him to poke, he says the magic words. That's a fundable idea.
Yeah.
And those are the words I'm looking for. So if I can't get him to that place, there's nothing there, and that's so having somebody who can help you do that analysis as well. If it can be a technical co-founder, that's great. If it's somebody in your life or an advisor or whatever, again, all of this is pointing to how critical your team is. And if you're building something that has a technology component, you need somebody who understands technology. you will spend more time and more money, and it will take longer to get things done if you don't have someone who is just as invested in your technology as you are in your business.
It makes me think of you went to LA recently and you were telling me, with one of our clients, and she was she pitching or was she?
Yeah.
Okay. So she was pitching
to a very big brand.
Very big brand. A brand so big that Jill was excited, by the way. She's like, oh, I can't believe that. I can't wait.
I know.
Okay. I had never heard of them, but okay.
I know.
Anyway, and I remember you telling me that often they would ask her questions, probably very technical, and she had you there.
Yes.
As not really a technical co-founder, but kind of.
Yeah, Raika, she's one of our incubator clients, and in the early phases especially, Raika is generally acting as a technical co-founder. Now, we also mentor people on business and training CEOs how to be a CEO. That's a big part of what we do too, because a lot of times, especially with that particular thing, she was like, oh my gosh, we're meeting with the CEO of this huge brand, and she's got all this power, and she's, really smart, and she has whatever. And I was like, you're a CEO too, and she needs you just as much as you need her. So remember that it's not an inequality.
Right.
It's a discussion and negotiation for how can we work together?
The only difference is the number of zeros behind their revenue versus your revenue right now.
Right now. And that doesn't matter in the long term.
No.
You still
your
have
zeros
something.
Might be way bigger in the end.
You still have something that she wants that provides value to her, that she doesn't have the time or the energy or the desire to create. It was yours. So
that's another attribute of any co-founder, really. But in this context, a technical co-founder is someone who can be a cheerleader for you and you for them.
Yep. Being able to like pump each other up. I want to pump you up. All right. This has been another episode of Incubate This with Grant, Daryl, and Cynthia. And we hope that our PSA or public service announcement has reached across the airwaves and right into your heart, and that you will go on the search and do some founder dating. All right, you guys, we'll see you next time.